They've weaponized your political positions. They've weaponized calling you a racist or a sexist for every little opinion. I was like, man, I want to call out what I'm seeing, but I don't want to be labeled a racist or a sexist because that's a horrible thing to be labeled. It just means you're calling out nonsense and you're telling the truth. But at that point in time, those words still had a little bit of meaning.
It's not like overnight one woke decision is going to kill a lot of these major companies. But it's a culture, and you're slowly driving people away.
We're not facing fans of these properties. We're facing activists that have infiltrated this industry, and they continue to push these false narratives and signal boost these false stories. I created Geeks and Gamers back in 2011, and it basically just started out as video game tournaments, local video game tournaments. Kind of evolved it a little more into more of a website, just talking about movies, video games. I was a big Star Wars fan. I was really excited when Disney purchased Lucasfilm. I regret saying that every day now at this point in time, but at the time I was very excited about it. We had a Facebook group, I had a website, and everything was really good. And then a movie called The Last Jedi came out and really just crashed all of my faith in Hollywood and opened up a lot of people's eyes to the wokeness in Hollywood. So we kind of shifted Geeks and Gamers as to more calling out identity politics. And once The Last Jedi happened, it opened my eyes up to what was happening in the video game industry, what was happening in the movie industry, the comic industry. And it was a red pill moment for me. But I was running Geeks and Gamers at this particular point in time, and I was a Donald Trump voter, a very, very passionate Donald Trump voter, but I never made that public knowledge. That's where the big moment for Geeks and Gamers shifted, because once I said I'm publicly a Trump supporter, that just started I'm going to call everything out now, because now I am going to be called every name in the book. And that is where the jumping off point really happened for us. And it opens up so many things that we're going to talk about here today.
You have The Last of Us, which is a very well-received video game that came out very late PlayStation 3, but really on PlayStation 4 continued to sell really well. And it's beloved by so many people. When you get announced a sequel that's coming, people expect certain things, especially when you advertise that it's another story between this father figure in Joel and his daughter Ellie. These characters that people had such love for, the relationship that they developed. Well, as it turns out, that's not exactly what Naughty Dog or Neil Druckmann, the director of the game, had in store. Instead, they were going to talk about identity politics. Instead, they were going to push things down your throat, whether it be about gender identity, whether it be about sexuality. And if you didn't like that, if you criticized that, you were just called a bigot. And what we saw ended up happening was this mass media cover-up is effectively what happened. The mainstream games journalists decided they were going to do everything in their power to protect Naughty Dog, while people like myself and Jeremy and tons of other people on YouTube and other independent creators were calling it out for what it was. One, they lied to everybody about what was in this game. And two, they've completely taken it in another direction. And after those opening weekend of sales, we've literally never heard another sales update for The Last of Us Part 2 as they sit there and rot on shelves. That's obviously a big one for us because our channels got falsely copyright struck by Naughty Dog to try to silence us, all because we were calling them out for what was in their own game.
Another one in the gaming world that I think is just as prominent as Last of Us 2 is Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 was a complete and total disaster for EA. And Patrick Soderlund, formerly of EA, a person who made one of the more controversial and ridiculous statements we've ever seen. But Battlefield 5, which focused on World War II, had women on the front lines of the battle. And much like leftists always do, invented a fake story about his daughter so that he could virtue signal with it, where he's like, well, my daughter was telling me the other day she plays Fortnite, and she says, Daddy, why don't anyone look like me in your video game? And he said at that point in time, he said he had to do what was right for history, and he had to, stand against bigotry, and we're going to have representation. And if anyone doesn't like that, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Well, guess what happened? Battlefield 5 lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Patrick Soderlund stepped down right after the first pre-sales numbers came out for Battlefield 5, which are completely awful. And it ended up losing hundreds of millions of dollars. The games journalists just continue to spin every story and manipulate every story, and that allows them to continue to push this nonsense when gamers are widely rejecting it.
It's about access to these people. They don't want to call out EA because they want to make sure that they get their advanced copy so that they can do a review, so that they can get clicks. They want to maintain this very cozy relationship between the press and the actual people that are making these games. And that is a bad combination, because what the press should be doing, it's fine if you have relationships, whatever, but you have to be honest. That's why we've seen the rise of independent media sources, wherever it may be, whether we're talking about Daily Wire, whether we're talking about us making videos, Geeks and Gamers on YouTube. People are flocking to that because they're rejecting in all aspects of media this kind of mainstream cozy relationship that they have, because it's so artificial. The original Last of Us is a story about Joel, who is a guy at the beginning of this basically big viral breakout. Joel loses his daughter, and he's just a survivor. He's making his way. He really doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody because of how he's been hurt. And he ends up on this mission to take this young girl, Ellie, and get her where she needs to go. And they go on this journey basically across the United States. And the end of the game, he has to make a decision about whether to potentially save humanity or to save this innocent girl. And he saves this innocent girl. In the second game, what people are so attached to is that relationship between Joel and Ellie. So as we fast forward a few years for this sequel, all of the trailers, all of the discussion points, all of the things that are being pushed are about this relationship between Joel and Ellie. You're supposed to go on another adventure together somehow. We're not quite sure how. Well, a few months before this game actually comes out, it gets revealed that only an hour or two into this game, Joel, the main character in the first game, gets brutally murdered by a woman named Abby, a woman who is very muscular, big Papa Pump memes all over the place. This character that was rejected by everybody, this character Abby murders Joel, and then you have to play as her for half of the rest of the game. It's a story about two women, Ellie and Abby, and it's a story about revenge. They even replaced parts of these trailers where Joel was aged up to make it look like they were going on an adventure, to then turn it into a flashback. So they were deceptive. They lied to everybody because they knew damn well people wouldn't buy this game if it was a story about Abby and Ellie instead of Joel and Ellie.
And Ryan is a classic example of never backing down, because Ryan's channel had 2 strikes from Naughty Dog simply for calling out what they were doing. Now, we had a copyright strike on Geeks and Gamers. We also had one on our gaming channel, thanks to Ryan. So technically he had 3. So he did hit the hat trick on that. And the criticisms was so bad that they went after everything and everyone. I lost my original Twitter account due to a Scott Steiner meme. Naughty Dog copyright struck my Twitter account over a DMCA claim, over a meme. That just shows you how insecure these people are about the things that they're creating, and they continue to market in a way that goes after the fans in terms of, we know what you want and we're going to pretend that we're going to give you what you want, but then we're going to subvert your expectations. It just continues. It's an endless cycle of nonsense with these companies.
The way that the media acted, their reaction was to say anyone that criticizes this is a bigot. You must be a racist. You must be a homophobe. All of these things, the same things we hear over and over and over again. That was their reaction, instead of legitimately listening to what the fans were saying.
They want to have those games that are going to have a built-in fan base that will be successful. That way they can go, look at this game. It has representation and diversity, and it's doing all of these sales. And it's like, that's not why the sales are happening, but they try to hijack that momentum. But ultimately, what we have seen time and time and time again is a wise man once said, a wise man that got 75 million votes just a few months ago said, everything woke turns to shit.
Everything woke turns to
Everything that goes into this realm ultimately suffers. Now, some things have a built-in fan base, and it's not going to have an immediate impact on that, but you start to see things just slowly decline.
It's not like overnight one woke decision is going to kill a lot of these major companies. But it's a culture, and you're slowly driving people away. And as people discover our YouTube channels, or they discover for themselves that I do not like this and I can't put my finger on it, slowly and inevitably, that's a crawl to disaster. And it's never enough. Jeremy brought up Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. when they allowed you to basically have a non-binary player. The way that they did that was you could choose male, female, or classified, unknown. Well, that wasn't enough for the activist. It wasn't enough that you gave them that option. Oh, it needs to say exclusively non-binary. I don't know how many genders we're up to now, but I'm pretty sure it's evolving day to day. I don't think any company wants to have to do a DLC every time somebody on TikTok decides they're a different gender.
If something is full on woke, they're not going to put a lot of money behind it because they know it's going to fail. This is why they continue to try to hijack pre-existing properties, pre-existing characters, pre-existing IPs, because they know they cannot build anything that's woke from the ground up. They can't do it because there's nobody there that's just willing to support it. Getting into spaces that already exist and then demanding that you accept them. And then once you accept them, then they demand that you get out of their space suddenly. That's kind of their process. So yeah, Anita Sarkeesian is someone who exists because of the activist in the games journalist world. This is one of the most unpopular people on the internet. I mean, she might get ratioed more than someone like Keith Olbermann does at this point. I mean, she is terribly unpopular.
This is somebody who 2 years before she started talking about video games is on camera saying that she doesn't play video games, that she doesn't like video games, that they're just not for her, until she decided to talk about tropes versus women in video games, and then realized that being a fake victim and being a grifter is far more profitable.
And a lot of these games journalist sites elevated Anita Sarkeesian and pretended that she was this voice of reason, and they tried to pretend that she was actually out there saying something that mattered. Most people look at this and they have a working brain and they realize that this person is full of crap. We're not facing fans of these properties. We're facing activists that have infiltrated this industry, and they continue to push these false narratives and signal boost these false stories. But they're not going to stop anytime soon unless we continue to hold them accountable and build our independent platforms right now.
And I think that a big part of that is for mainstream people on the right, mainstream Republicans, mainstream conservatives, whatever you want to call it, maybe stop consistently bashing video game culture. That's a popular thing to do. Even people like Josh Hawley did it just not too long ago. I like a lot of what Josh Hawley stands for. But when you do that and you say, oh, well, that's just not worth your while. Video games, you shouldn't bother with that, blah, blah, blah. Video games are an inherent part of culture for a lot of us that grew up within the past couple decades. And me and Jeremy are also big sports fans. I don't think Josh Hawley would have a problem with somebody, spending several hours on a Sunday watching football, but he has a problem if they were doing that and maybe playing video games. And we happen to enjoy both. That would help a lot in this fight, I think, if more mainstream Republicans, you don't even have to necessarily support everything, but if you see this, if you see people complaining about a real problem that you have in the gaming industry, maybe give that a signal boost, maybe look into it, because a lot of our values can align on those things.
A lot of conservatives tend to disrespect gaming and gaming culture, and I don't think that's helpful. When you have someone that is objectively dumb as AOC, very popular on Twitch streams because they're embracing a lot of these Twitch streamers. And these Twitch streamers are idiots, by the way. Most of them are idiots, but all they want is the clout. All they see is AOC on my channel. They want to take pictures and everything like that. And yeah, that's cringe in itself. It's absolutely cringe. But you're talking about Twitch streamers that have hundreds of thousands of and maybe millions of followers, and they're sitting there bringing someone like an AOC on their channel. All that's doing is showing young kids like, oh, AOC is one of the cool ones. I'm going to pay attention to what her politics are. That is where a lot of the culture is being lost right now. The video game industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's massive. It's bigger than movies. It's bigger than anything. We cannot continue to disrespect the gaming industry. If you're on the conservative side of things, embrace it and call out the nonsense going on instead of attacking the industry as a whole, because that does not help the case at all. We are obviously part of Geeks and Gamers. Geeksandgamers.com is our website. We have several YouTube channels under the Geeks and Gamers banner, but you can find everything from that main channel, Geeks and Gamers. We have the plus symbol in the name. It's not Geeks plus Gamers, but it is Geeks and Gamers, geeksandgamers.com. You can follow me on Twitter as long as I have a Twitter account at DDayCobra. That's, I guess my second one is at DDAY_Cobra. And we would love any support that you guys want to send our way. Thank you for having us.
You'll catch me on Geeks and Gamers all the time. You'll also catch us on Sports Wars, which is a big sports channel that we are continuing to grow there, where we're calling out woke nonsense. And then for any of my personal stuff, just search RK Outpost on YouTube. I'm sure you'll find it.